Today I'm going to show you what happens when you plaster a wall with multiple backgrounds, and I'm going to show you exactly what happens when the wall starts to set. So you're applying the plaster and before you know it you've gone to check up on it 10 minutes later and the plaster's starting to crack, starting to turn. We're explaining why it happens and what to do when this happens to you. Today we're going to be talking about dealing with different backgrounds. Now, as a beginner plasterer, this is probably the worst thing you come across. It's having different areas plastered with different materials. And what basically is going to happen is you're going to get different areas set in at different times. What we want to do is make sure we're killing the suction. Now, the reason this is so important, if you are a beginner plasterer, you want all the plaster to go off at the same time and you want the plaster to give you enough time to get a nice finish. Now, on this wall, I've had to fill in some chased areas where there was electrics put in. So I had to fill that with bonding, rake that out. So we've got bonding on the chasing here. This door was fitted before I've got here. So this is hardwall, it's British gypsum hardwall, which is a high suction product. This is existing plaster. And then over there we've got original plaster before we came here. So we've got 4 different backgrounds, 4 different materials. Now, if you don't know this, if you are a beginner, if you are a plasterer fully pledged, you'll know that 4 different backgrounds is a nightmare to work with. Today I'm going to show you how to prepare these walls so you'll have no problems working forward. And I'm also going to show you some systems in place so if the plaster does turn, you'll be equipped and know fully what to do to make sure it's not going to catch you out. So, we've got some PVA. The first thing I'm going to do is treat this. This is British gypsum hardwall. It's very dry. You can see by how pale it is that the suction is very high on this. So if you have got areas where, say you've got existing plaster, and you've got areas where it's been brought out with bonding or hardwall, you've got to PVA this. And it's a strong coat of PVA, it's 3-to-1. So I'm going to PVA it there. PVA this all the way through. And that's the first thing you're going to do. What you'll find is, because it's hardwall, that's probably going to pull in very fast. And that basically means that's exactly what it'll do with your plaster. If you're plastering a wall, then the plaster's going to pull in just as fast as the PVA. So what I first want to do is kill the suction there. So I'm going to PVA the whole area. So now the hardwall's pulled exceptionally fast, and that is what I'm saying about suction. So the reason we PVA is to kill suction a little bit. Now the next part is what's really going to finish it off. Now a lot of people don't think about using a plaster as pre-grit, but that's what I'm going to show you right now. This stuff is Bondit plaster as pre-grit, and then what I've got is a roller. You literally just roll it on, and this is the best product to use to make sure you're not going to get caught out. Because this is what's going to give you an even key throughout the whole of the wall, but it's also going to help control the suction so you've got an even background to work on. And this will make sure an equal amount of time for each section. Now I PVA'd the hardwall first as a precaution. I do recommend you do that as a beginner, but generally this is brilliant for killing suction. So this will give you equal amount of time, so when it comes to skimming, there's no issues. So if you are new, I wouldn't risk just using PVA. It's going to give you a nice key, and if you have got chased out areas, uneven walls, and you had to use bonding in the past, just buy some of this. It's a bit more expensive than PVA, but trust me, as a primer, this is the best thing on the market. And I think this as a pre-grit is brilliant. So I'm going to put this on all throughout the whole wall. We've got to wait for this to dry. It doesn't take that long, it's usually about 3 hours, and then you're good to skim. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so we've got the mix on. Now, we're just applying the plaster to the wall. And the main thing to think about now is the fact we've completely controlled the suction. Now, plastering onto this is lovely. You've got a nice little bit of grit, but not too much like blue grit. It's just a nice amount where you can feel the plaster stick into the wall. It's got a nice grip. And when you are troweling, it's not pulling in. So, in terms of suction and suction rates, it's looking really good. But I'm going to show you in this video what happens when plastering does go wrong. What happens when the plaster starts to set. I'm going to talk about what's the best thing to do. And I'm going to essentially show you a massive tip, a controversial tip. And a lot of people might hate it, but I'm going to show you a way that's going to allow you to get out of this shit if it comes to it. So, we're going to apply the first and second coat to the wall. And then I'm going to talk about what can happen if your preparation isn't done correctly. I'm going to show you what happens when plaster fails, and I'm going to show you exactly how to get out of it. So I'm going to go on a bit of a journey right now. It's very hot in here. We've got a lot of heat coming through. There's a lot of glass. So we're just going to talk about how to get out of troubled spots. So I'm just going to showcase how easy it is to plaster when using this product. So we've got this area, which is obviously this is existing, we're just troweling it up. And then this section here is where the chase was. Now usually you could get a bit of drag because the bonding's pulling hard, or areas where the hard wall is. It's literally the exact same. So the suction has been completely killed, which is, as a beginner and for any plasterer, the security you need to know that when you are using a product, everything is sealed correctly. So what it's telling me is everything on this wall is drying at the same time. So there's no unexpected surprises. We haven't got the areas at the top where you've got the hard wall drying, pulling in faster than this area. Everything's just drying correctly. Now I'm going to show you what happens when you get sections of wall that don't dry correctly and you can start to get cracking. This is basically where the plaster's setting too fast. I did a clip on a video a good few months ago where I purposely kind of failed in plastering. Watch this clip. And I'm going to tell you a fast way to get out of a troubled spot like this. Watch it now. Well, let's check the other side. It's solid, you can't put the fingers in. So where this section here, you can see, you can leave fingerprints in. This section, you really got to push it, really firmed up. There's one section up here, which is okay, which I'll explain in a minute. But this, really firmed up. Now this has literally been around 10 minutes into the process. Got two options. You run away, you have a little poo in your pants and you panic. Or you use this little simple hack. Now this is what we're going to be using. This is a sponge float. Now not a lot of plasterers like this. It's quite controversial, but this is a great way to get yourself out of trouble. 2.5 litre pressure sprayer. Get these from Wickes, get them from anywhere, get any pressure sprayer. I'm just going to gently put a mist on the wall. So, nice gentle mist, not too much water, not trying to drench it. Actually, depending on the situation, if the hard wall or whatever surface you're working in is really pulling in, just use a bit more water. But what you're looking for is just a gentle spray. And then what we want to do, using a sponge float, figure of 8 motions, we're going to bring the plaster back to life. Now, let me show you. It's leaving the texture, and all we're doing is figure of 8 motions, just bringing that plaster back. Now what this is going to do is almost give us a reset button. It's going to allow us to get in control of the plaster again. It's going to allow us to bring it all at the same point. And it's going to allow us to get ourselves back in control. Now this is what it's all about. Yes, it's not an ideal situation, not especially if you don't like sponging, but this is a great way to get yourself back into position where the plaster is in a normal workable state. So do this on all the wall. Now you don't want to jump on it straight away, you want to give it a bit of time, because if it's too wet and the texture's too wet, you're just going to pull it all back off again, which is why I recommend you have a light spray of water. You don't want too much, but just enough to bring it back. Now, in previous videos I used to use a flexi trowel. I'm pretty against that now, and I look back at that stupidly, but probably going to do a sponge float video properly in the future, but I'm just going to use my normal base trowel, my carbon trowel, and we're going to pull out the lines. Now here's what happens. You've got lots of play, you've got lots of movement, and you've got lots of time. The plaster is back as if it was just applied. Now, again, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this because it can weaken the plaster, but if this is a difference between you losing a hit, then I'm going to take this 9 times out of 10. You can see the texture there, see how easily it glides across the wall. We're just bringing that texture right out, and what you're left with is a really matte, uniform finish. We're troweling out all the plaster there, so working all the way through, bringing all the lines out. And the worst thing you want to do is leave this too long. There's a fine line. If you leave it too long, that grain will set and you'll be left with all the lines in the plaster. So that is the worst case scenario. It's amazing really, because what you're left with is a wall that is smooth, you've got a uniform finish, and it's really just going to pull all the plaster together and kill any suction that was disturbing your wall previously. Now this is something that everyone should keep in a van. Love it or hating, the sponge floating is just a great way to get yourself out of trouble. So as a plasterer, whether you're a DIY or a professional, having a sponge and a sprayer in your van is just a great way to back yourself up if you get into any trouble. But if you just follow the advice at the beginning, prepare your walls correctly, where we're PVAing a hard wall and using a pre-grit, I recommend to anyone, even if you are fully professional now, that it's a great way just to control any surface. If you want to see the full process on plastering and when you should be using trowels at what stage, click this video where we'll show you everything you need to know, from plastering, application, flattening, in terms of which flexes to use, when to use speed skim. We'll show you everything here. Click there, see you next one. Cheers.